Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden made history this week by choosing Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate. So if elected, Harris would be the first woman, first African American and Asian American to become vice president. Senator Harris is expected to go head-to-head with Vice President Mike Pence at the only debate between the two right here in Utah on October 7th. That debate is being held at the University of Utah, where the Hinckley Institute of Politics is located. So joining me now to talk about Harris and the debate is Hinckley Institute Director Jason Perry. Jason, thanks for being with us again here this morning.
So glad to be with you.
You, as always, whether it's social distance or not, I'm always glad to talk to you today.
Yeah, so true.
So before we get into the debate, what do you make of Harris as Biden's pick?
Well, this is one of the top picks going into this election cycle, and this is really the biggest question of the election cycle. There are all kinds of people putting out their bets on who this is going to be, but I think she ended up being a really good pick for Joe Biden for a couple big reasons. And we knew the kind of person he was going to pick in terms of the stature, in terms of the public exposure this person would have, but Kamala is going to be someone that really energizes his party. I think he picked her because he sees her as the next generation of the Democratic Party, being over 20 years younger than him, but also she puts him solidly in the moderate side of the Democratic Party.
What do you make of critics who say this was his only real option, who's saying he had to pick a woman, which he said he would do, but then picking a woman of minority as his running mate?
Well, I think that we knew what he was looking for going into this thing. I think it's historic. It balances his ticket without question. I think she's exactly the kind of person that he was looking for. And she is going to be a force on the ticket without question. And I think going into it, she was the one I thought was most likely to be picked. But I think she's going to be very interesting, and she's already showing to be a great balance on his ticket. But I don't know if you saw this also. She was helping him raise $26 million in the first 24 hours of this election cycle. She's going to help him in lots of ways.
Yeah, I saw the money coming in from there, just from that announcement yesterday. So you're seeing right there what she's already brought to the table. How does this change the campaign there for both Joe Biden and then, of course, President Trump?
Well, we're starting to see it already. We start seeing a little bit of the nastiness come out. It's time that they start attacking each other to some extent. I think that's how it changes it now. It also sets the stage for the debates that are coming up, the vice presidential debate, but also the presidential debates. But we're going to start seeing some real serious talk about the issues going forward. And there is a big difference of approach between President Trump and candidate Joe Biden in this election cycle. And I think the differences are going to become even more stark in the next couple of months, all the way into November.
And do you think that with Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, that helps bring some of those issues more to the forefront?
Well, it absolutely does. You start looking at some of her experience in the past, issues of racial injustice, systemic racism, things like that that we're talking about as a country. We're going to see those come to the forefront. Senator Harris already talked about that yesterday in the first big rally that they had. I think some of those key issues we're talking about as a country right now are going to come to the stage. They're going to be something people talk about, and no one's going to be able to get away from those issues because we don't want to. These are the issues we need to be talking about as a country. I think she helps with that, and I think both campaigns are going to spend some time on the issues that matter most.
Now, you mentioned the debate. We know the vice presidential debate is there at the U. So how is the U getting ready for that debate?
Wow, this is an amazing process to get this vice presidential debate. It's interesting because when we decided as a state and as the university we wanted to go for this debate, we submit an application. We say why we want to get it. There are 3 presidential debates. There's 1 vice presidential debate. And when we got that one, we said, well, you know, this is the vice presidential debate. But this is what's interesting. This is the debate to watch in the country. This is the one everyone's interested in now. This is going to be one of those moments when these 2 candidates have a chance to really even outshine their bosses for a moment when the whole world watches. And it's going to be about 100 million people watching this vice presidential debate.
A lot of eyes there in the University of Utah, so you're taking center stage there. It's not exactly the stage we've seen in vice presidential debates in the past. How is that going to look different this year with COVID-19?
Yeah, you're right. We've had a lot of things about this vice presidential debate, not in terms of the great outreach to the rest of the world, but in terms of the scope of the people coming. For example, historically, you have 800 to 900 reporters coming to the site that number is going to get down to about 250 for this vice presidential debate. And it's because we are going through very strict protocols. We're keeping everyone safe. Usually they have this big spin alley where the candidates come out and meet with the press, convince everyone that they won the debate, that they did the best job. That's gone as well, in favor of moving those kinds of events to sites that the candidates select for themselves. But in terms of the exposure to the world, the ability to show this debate to the world, that's going to remain the same. But we're taking every precaution imaginable to make sure that the people who come to the state are safe, that our students are safe, that are helping.
And we're glad you are, and of course, congratulations on getting the election, or getting the vice president's debate right there at the U. Talking this morning here with Jason Perry, the director.
I'm so glad to have it.
Yep. Talking here this morning here with Jason Perry, the director of Utah's Hinckley Institute of Politics. Jason, as always, a pleasure talking to you this morning.